Good evening, I'm Jerry Anderson. Thousands of Americans were booked into local jails today, and thousands more will follow tomorrow in this country. You see, there are a reported 11 million admissions to local jails in this country every year. Why? Well, let's think about that. Oh, it's to keep us safe. That's what it is. It's all about safety. No, I'm sorry. It's about justice. People demand justice. I mean, those are the things we often hear.
That's right, Jerry. I'm Jason Hibbs. And over the past decade, we've been hearing something else in American communities, including Lucas County, which has taken up the safety and justice challenge. And that is that nearly 2 out of 3 incarcerated people are presumed innocent, that 3 out of 4 are in jail for non-violent offenses, and the large majority of the local jail population deals with mental health and or addiction issues.
So, are local jails the best places for those people? Or do those jails become very expensive roads to nowhere when the proper help could actually turn those lives around, make us all safer in the long run, maybe even save us some money? The John D. and Catherine T. MacArthur Foundation sought to find out.
That is right. It's the Safety and Justice Challenge from the MacArthur Foundation. It seeks to reduce the jail populations, to do so safely, and to also reduce the racial and ethnic disparities within those local jail populations. Now, we've been documenting the local Safety and Justice Challenge over the past year in the form of a 10-episode podcast series, a 5-episode radio series hosted by my colleague Jerry here, and a documentary that we are just moments away from debuting. We also have a live panel right now at WGTE. I don't know if we can take that wide shot, but we have experts here in this field and some of the people on the ends of this panel who have lived it. They have been through it and are in recovery. But first, we are going to hear how the county invested $5 million MacArthur grant dollars over the 10-year challenge, and we are going to meet some of those very real people with real struggles who were able to break cycles, save themselves, save others, and potentially save some of our tax dollars too.
Dig down, head low, relax, the river flows, takes you out to the sea, where the water will set you free. Blood flows, head shakes, bones break, the body aches. Rise up, the roots from the ground, bringing life to an empty sound. I know you can hear me, I'm calling, receive me. I'm never going back to the start again. I come alive, yeah. I come alive, yeah. I come alive, yeah. I come alive, yeah.
I grew up in the dope game since I was 14 years old, selling drugs, marijuana, cocaine, heroin, acid, everything. That's how we were raised. You know, that it was expected that you're going to prison. Eventually, you're going to go to prison.
Raised to run the streets.
I like smoking a lot of weed, but during the end, when I first caught my first federal cases, I was really heavy into cocaine, real heavy in cocaine.
Got into the gangs, got into the drug dealing, took a persona, had a few nicknames on the street, came to the attention of the police, was incarcerated. I think I was arrested first time, 13, 14. I turned 18 in the Department of Youth Services.
How did guys like these stop the cycle?
Inside the prisons, you will meet more repeat offenders than first-time offenders.
Mm-hmm.
And go from criminal to compassionate?
It's a good guy right here, man.
You're a good guy.
One of the best right here.
Two of the best that ever do it.
Lucas County leaders were challenged.
This challenge was really an opportunity for us to take a systematic look at how our system operates. And it was very revealing. We had a lot of work to do.
To safely lower the jail population,
our jail had been overcrowded and had been under a federal court order for decades.
and reduce racial disparities in the jail.
On the racial and ethnic disparity, what did Lucas County get wrong? We explore the 10-year, $5 million MacArthur grant, what went well, what went wrong, and where Lucas County leaders go from here.
So I dig into my pocket, all my money spent, so I get deeper, but still coming up with lint. So I start my mission, leave my residence, thinking how could I get some dead presidents? I need money.
Back in the back in the day, you didn't have to hide anything. You were blatant with it, and you were out there with it, and you showed off. You know what I mean? Whatever, nice cars, nice house, gold, rings, diamonds, the whole nine. When you're raised in a certain life and a lifestyle, you're not knowing or seeing that it's wrong. Especially seeing what those you look up to or those you love, and you see them doing it, so you partake too as just as a normalized thing. It's just normal. So we don't look at, and that's with anything in life. Like CEOs, they got their kids and they follow their footsteps. Electricians, roofers, they follow their dad's footsteps, and then I did the same thing. And it was just a normal thing for me. Grew up in it, raised in it, lived it, and served a lot of time because of it.
A total of 23 years for Eloy Perez.
I was in Pennsylvania, McKean, Pennsylvania. I was in Glenville, West Virginia. I was in Elkton, Ohio. I was in Terre Haute, Indiana. Oh, Terre Haute. I was in Sandstone, Minnesota. And now, 23 years of my life. I was hustling in prison. I mean, most of the time, most people are already there connected. And, you meet people, homies, whatever, and you figure it out. You're gonna figure out, everybody's gonna figure out how to do it. It's a demand. Until you get rid of that demand, you're never going to stop it. It's not never going to stop. And if somebody's life as a user is always his mindset is continuously using, he's going to figure out a way to continue using. I didn't even know it was going to be a last time, to be honest. And not going to lie, like on my prior incarceration and my prior times being locked up, it wasn't even a thought to quit. It was, you're gonna go home and you're gonna reoffend, you're gonna continue doing and living your life and having the best life, and whenever you get caught, you get caught, and then you come back out and you do the same thing. I mean, I had money in there and I had a good job. We worked in the prison, the prison factory, and I was making good money, but it's that other money, that's the notoriety of who you are and where you come from. That's you want to stay there.
But it was on a random night.
I was in Glenville, West Virginia, and that was where I had my dream.
A vision while behind bars.
It was, for me, an awakening.
A dream of freedom.
I woke up and I'm like, take me back. I don't want to get up, because I knew that when I opened my eyes, I knew where I was at. And when I did eventually open my eyes, it was brick wall. And from that moment on, I just said, you know what? I'm done. I'm tired. I'm not coming back no more. It's over. This is it. I'm done. And from that point on, I realized that if I didn't change from that day forward, even though I still had time to serve, if I didn't change from that day forward, I was never going to change. And it had to start from in there, and it had to start from in here. And I think that's where it hit me, is when it started from in here and in here.
Perez says some difficult realizations were delivered in that dream.
They had a huge impact on me the day that I woke up, because from that day forward, I realized I was selfish. Like I was selfish. I was giving they were driving some of the baddest rides in the city. They had everything. You know, like my mom, my kids, they had what a lot of kids don't have. And I was jewelry, everything, all my stuff that was theirs. But I was buying them.
The father he wasn't the father his kids really needed.
I didn't know how to be a dad.
He felt like a bad son.
I always feel guilty when my mom comes and sees me. It's 10 hours from here. I would tell her, like, no, Mom, it's too far. Like, wait, I'll be home. No, I need to see you. No, I need to see you.
It was a visit from his grandkids and a question from his 7-year-old grandson that hit the hardest.
But yeah, the oldest one is the one, he came and talked to me, and the other two were standing next to me, and, they wanted to know, why I was in prison. Came over my shoulder and said, Papa, tapped me on the shoulder. I got something to ask you, Papa. I'm like, what's up? Why are you here? And I told him, I did bad stuff. I sold drugs and I got locked up, and that's why you guys are not gonna do that. I was selfish. There's no other way I can put it.
Perez says he had a newfound determination to live a different life.
I gave it up. I gave everything up. I had whatever I had on the compound, which is the prison, and anybody who owed me money, I said, you guys, we're done. You don't owe me nothing, keep it. Don't ask me no more. And everybody just couldn't understand like what took place. And to some I explained, to some that knew me real well, I explained to them like, look, man, it's over. Like I'm not coming back here no more. Like it's over. And a lot of them pat on the backs, you know what I mean? But a lot of them like, oh, you're gonna come back, you're gonna do this, you're gonna do that. I said, no, I'm not, And I felt like a feather the day I did that. Like I floated. Like I was so happy and relieved that I knew I wasn't gonna live this life no more, that it was just, I was free. I was actually free. And I still had 8 years still left of my time. But I was never more freer in my life than that day right there when I let everything go. When I let it all go, I was never freer in my life ever. And it was life-changing. It was life-changing. I knew this for years. I mean, I've known this for years. And everybody who's in there can't say that they don't think about it or nothing. They all want to say, I'm going to go out and ball till I fall. They all want to say the same things, and but we all know what it leads to, and that was the thing. Like I was tired of what it was leading to, and I didn't want to lead to that no more.
What he wasn't sure of, the next steps.
Opportunity is what a lot of people don't have coming out of prison. I was focused on doing my time, finishing out the best way possible. I had to learn how to budget the money that I was making, because now all this other money is not there no more. So I had to budget, and I was finding myself. I was trying to see, what is Eloy? When the COVID hit, I was in an institution in Minnesota, and I was trying to figure out, okay, I got a couple years left. What are you gonna do?
It was during downtime, and there was so much of it during COVID, that he kept hearing about a truck driver shortage.
Specifically, truck drivers. And a shortage of drivers is one of the many reasons for the pileup at shipping ports. A pileup that did not surprise Bruce Busada one bit.
So then they were talking about, the trucking industry and how they were lacking drivers. I researched it. Ordered books on businesses. That was it. That was what I'm going to be. That was going to be my career, was going to be a truck driver.
He started asking around for help, and someone recommended he get it from an unlikely source.
When they told me about him, I said, Willie, I said, no, yeah, man, he's mentoring, he's doing this, he's helping people. I said, are you serious? He said, yep.
Toledo gang leader Willie Knighten. Knighten was arrested late Wednesday during a raid by Toledo's gang task force. Known on the street as Short Dog, Knighten is the alleged kingpin of a gang known as the Folks.
That Willie, unbeknownst to Perez, had a story of his own. The day after this story aired, Knighten was released and back on the streets.
So all that went to my head, all the power, all the pride.
But that freedom would end, Knighten says. In 1996, he was sentenced to life in prison for a murder that he did not commit.
But now when you're sentenced to life in prison, all that changes, especially when you're innocent. That was the difference. I'm innocent, and now they just took my freedom. So you expect to be free the first day they arrest you. When they question you, all realize they had the wrong person. When they go to trial, all they realize they had the wrong person. When you go through the appeal process, realize they had the wrong person. Some say they did, no. I still served 13 years of my life in prison. I've seen a lot of horrible things inside prison. If you Google on National Geographic, predators behind bars, Lebanon, Ohio. That's what they sent me to.
He says it was tough even for the tough.
Roach infested, rat infested penitentiary that had one of the highest AIDS population, HIV infections. Most stabbings, one of the most stabbings, you know. And this was 3 years after Lucasville riots of 1993, where they killed over a dozen. They sent a lot of those gentlemen down there where I was at. A lot of those gang members who heard of me came down there also. And for the first couple of years in prison, I still held on to my membership. I held on to my rank.
Knighten says it was inside this violent place that one fight would forever change his outlook.
Retaliation, I'm a life like him. So what he did was going to get him carried out to prison in a stretcher. We were going to make the helicopter pull into the prison and carry him on a stretcher.
That was the plan, to kill a man who Knighten says sucker punched him, knocking Knighten unconscious after an earlier fight between the two that officers broke up. Knighten says he later woke up in the captain's office, where a correctional office confirmed that he had witnessed the assault. The other inmate was charged with assault, but that wasn't enough for Knighten.
So I orchestrated from the whole to get him sent over there where I was at. Now, one thing you can't do in prison is get a guy moved into the block with you after a fight. Unless you got money. You got money, make anything happen. So he came into my block. But before he had came into my block, when I got out of the hole, 4 guys were waiting in my cell that I was assigned to go to with knives. And they said, give us the word, and we have him killed. And it was then and there that I couldn't do it. So by the time that I'd already paid to have him moved over there, I had to stand by my word. So I met up with him. I made him pay. You know, I extorted him a little bit. But after that, I gave my word. It'd be okay, and I denounced all my gang ties. And I started becoming a mentor in prison.
Knighten decided to distance himself from that situation and begin a new life, all while facing a life sentence. He started singing in the church choir, mentoring others, and praying. And one day he thought his prayers were about to be answered when he was summoned by a judge. But Knighten was told to be patient instead.
You know, I thought I was going home, but I didn't. But he had told me that the wheels of justice turn slow. But they are turning. 12 and a half years later, I received a letter from the judge. And he had stated that he had placed an innocent man in prison. He said, this case has weighed heavily on my heart for the last 12 and a half years. And after I got that letter, I was just so happy. And 2 months later, he died. So everybody was telling me, oh man, you were so close to being free if that judge didn't die. But I told him my faith is in God. My faith is not in any man. And 2 months after he died, Governor Ted Strickland called down to the prison, said, free inmate Knight 351662 tomorrow morning. And I went from serving life on Monday to sleeping on my parents' floor on Tuesday night. It was a miraculous miracle that I've never forgot. And I'm so appreciative of it. That's why I go so hard in my community to help and save others.
Caught up to speed on Knighten's exoneration, Perez reached out for help, something he admits is hard to do.
You know, and that it hurts a man's pride. As a man, you know, it's hard for, especially in our life, we don't want to accept anything from anybody. You know what I mean? We're men. We're supposed to get it on our own.
Go-getters.
That's how I was raised. But to be able to learn and break away from that was liberating too. It was a whole new mindset that I had to learn, was to be able to accept help. You know what I mean? And then I got with Willie over here, and they're like, go see Willie, go see him. He's gonna take care of you, he's gonna give you a grant. They're doing grants for CDLs. I said, all right. And I gave him a call and got to talking. And
I still had to fill him out, make sure, but it was easy. He did the work.
he said, you came highly recommended.
Highly recommended. Yeah.
I can understand why he wanted to fill me out and see whether or not I was serious in what I want to do. But I was serious. Like I wasn't serious. I was determined that that's what I was going to do. And that, to me, for those guys that are in there to try to get out, it has to be an awareness that they can say, hey, okay, here's what we're going to do for you. Like
After release.
After release, right. Even though there's opportunity and there's opportunity in prison, what makes it hard is the opportunity coming out.
What we really want is behavior change so you don't repeat, right? We don't want career people going to jail. So I think when you find that there are different methods to do behavior change.
That's Lucas County Commissioner Pete Gherkin. He, along with other county commissioners like retired Commissioner Carol Contrada, applied for the $5 million Safety and Justice grant from the MacArthur Foundation to rethink jails and justice in Lucas County.
In 2014 and in 2015, when we began the Safety and Justice Challenge, we looked at a population that had a lot of people there who were waiting for trial. They may be waiting for days and days. They might be charged with a minor misdemeanor. And they weren't being processed through the system. And it was actually causing a less safe condition for the community. So the individuals in the jail were not being correctly served by the criminal justice system, nor was the population of Lucas County, because people were released for reasons that maybe didn't make sense. So we needed to have the judges, the probation officers, the sheriff's deputies, Toledo police, the community police really look at what they were arresting for, and then once people were in the system, how we can have a fair and just adjudication while keeping the community safe.
Contrada and others admit it was an announcement made by then Sheriff John Tharp that made them realize something must be done to stop the status quo. Municipal Court Judge Tim Kuhlman spoke about it on episode 2 of the Rethinking Jails and Justice podcast.
So I was a Toledo Municipal Court judge at that time. Our jail was consistently overcrowded. What all of us have known since the jail opened in 1975, this jail is overcrowded, and it's just not fair to the people who are housed there and the people who work there. It's not safe. And when he stood up in front of the jail and said that, we finally, after 5 decades, decided as a community, okay, we're going to do something about it.
The new facility that we're building, I think, was so necessary to have this facility built, because the facility that is on Spillbush today is not a great facility for incarceration due to several reasons. First of all, it's unsafe, in my opinion, in my humble opinion, is that there are so many blind spots in the jail. It's 6 stories high, and it was basically built like a hotel. Is that when you walk in, there's a large lobby area, and there's different wings that are blind to the correction officers. So it's impossible to be able to monitor the cameras the way they needed to be monitored to see how each and every wing is being dealt with. So with the new facility is that you'll have direct supervision. That means the officers will be right in the facility, right in the open area with the inmates, So it's so important to do that. So the facility, we need to make sure that they're humane. We have humane treatment for the inmates, safe treatment for the inmates, and also the employees. So that's so important that we get this new facility built and making sure that it's built properly.
The purpose of the MacArthur grant was not to build a new jail, but to safely reduce the jail population and the racial and ethnic disparities within the jail. But for the Rethinking Jails and Justice podcast, in interview after interview, people kept telling me that this jail would be a game changer and they hope it would be built soon. But if you've been out here lately, you may have noticed there's not much going on.
We found out there was a disparate number of minorities in jail to the population ratio. So we wanted to attack that and see what we could do about it. So that was really the premise. It got really interesting after that. So our challenge was not only to get the data, but to find a common language between 20 judges in one county. So trying to get 20 judges to the table and seriously look at how they operate was a challenge. But I'm proud to say in Lucas County, our judges stood up to it.
They said, do you have any ideas how we can safely reduce the jail population? And I said, I may, but I actually don't have a good feel for exactly who's in the jail and why they're there. So I wanted to see if they had a printout that I could have so I could analyze it. And sure enough, when I looked at the people that were in the jail, I saw that there are certainly people that I think you would think may need to be in a jail pre-trial when you're thinking about public safety. But there was an awful lot of people that were in the jail that were there for relatively innocuous charges. I mean, low-level, non-violent, non-victim cases that were in the jail. And as I looked at them, I had a feeling I could predict the likely outcomes on those cases. If I know what's going to happen, a month from now, perhaps we can get to that earlier resolution in 3 days or 4 days, so that you're lowering the jail population because people's length of stay is reduced significantly, but it's also going to be better outcomes for the individuals, because when people are in the jail and they stay there for any prolonged period of time, and frankly, there's a study that shows through the MacArthur Foundation, the Arnold Foundation, that talks about the hidden costs of pretrial detention. It shows that within 2 to 3 days, people's lives are going to start to destabilize by being in the jail. And it makes sense. You're going to lose your job. You're going to perhaps lose your housing. Your kids may be taken from you and put into protective services. I mean, it makes things much more difficult once you get out in the community, and unfortunately, often makes it more likely that you're going to return to the criminal justice system again and become involved again.
Can you talk about that a little bit, the outcomes for the community? Because the cynic might say, well, they did the crime. If they lose their job and their home, that's what they get. That's a consequence to their actions.
Yeah, and that is, I think, a prevailing opinion sometimes, right? Do the crime, do the time. I would suggest that that is a little bit too short-sighted of a view, because what we really want is not to have people committing crimes or being involved in the criminal justice system, and absolutely don't want them returning to the system. So that we have to figure out ways that we don't make people more likely to return. So when you have people unnecessarily housed at the jail, when we had other alternatives like a release to the community, perhaps on pretrial services, maybe with an ankle monitor, things like that, the likelihood of their lives destabilizing quickly is going to be lessened. And if we don't do it, and again, things actually get worse for that individual, then the likelihood is they are going to become involved in the criminal justice system in the future again. And that is where public safety is going to be affected.
McNulty says they analyzed every stage in the criminal justice system with a comprehensive system mapping exercise. And from police interaction to reintegration, racial disparities were evident at each stage. For instance, while the county's African American population was about 19.5%, African American involvement in the justice system was disproportionately high, often between 56 and 60%.
We said we need to figure out why that is and are there ways we can impact that. And so we've done it in a number of ways. One of the things that we did is we got a new diversion program in the Toledo Municipal Court that was focusing on sort of the top 10 offenses, which also happened to be offenses that did not involve victims and were nonviolent offenses. Drug paraphernalia, obstructing official business, disorderly conduct, relatively low-level cases that probably aren't the highest of priority cases in the community, but we're driving that jail population. And we instead decided, let's divert those those cases into a program where there would be an aspect of cognitive behavioral therapy, dosages of that, to see in a relatively short period of time, can we impact decisions? Can we impact the way interactions with law enforcement look? Can we assist people in getting to treatment and services, and maybe address those behavioral health type issues? And that actually turns out has impacted the racial and ethnic disparities. And I think that was by design, because we were looking to see what are the top 10 offenses, and we did cross-check to see by race, are African Americans overrepresented in those cases, and they in fact were. So I think that we're addressing it that way.
In the second out of 7 strategies, $2.3 million were spent on, quote, managing based on risk, end quote, to help judges make better decisions. That money covered the first 4 years of enhanced electronic monitoring, including salaries for 3 new monitoring officers, a clerk, and an enforcement deputy, earning $66,000 a year. In episode 1 of the podcast, Executive Director of the Toledo-Lucas County Criminal Justice Coordinating Council, Holly Matthews, said those salaries were absorbed by the county as this strategy saved money overall. Funding also provided 105 GPS monitoring bracelets and phones for the team. In addition, this paid for risk assessment scores using an algorithm to help judges determine who may be safely released. And that's discussed in detail on episode 3 of the Rethinking Jails and Justice podcast.
It is also clear that there are individuals that cycle through the system and return to the system. And we can do the work as well as we can on an individual case. But if we're not addressing any of the underlying issues that brought somebody into the system in the first place, or contributed to them becoming a part of the system in the first place, then we can't be surprised when they return to the system. That's where the social workers come in.
It's called the Opportunity Project, housed in the Public Defender's Office, and one part of Strategy 3, funded by $700,000 MacArthur grant dollars. The Opportunity Project engages with individuals shortly after their initial court appearance, offering voluntary participation. The program aims to assess participants' needs and connect them to services potentially influencing case outcomes positively. Now, this could lead to judges releasing participants on bond, prosecutors reducing charges, or offering diversion, and ultimately reducing recidivism. McNulty says the MacArthur Foundation provided technical assistance and funding for the attorney component. Additionally, local mental health and recovery services supported the project by funding operational costs and 2 social workers.
After their very first appearance, we'll go within hours to meet with them. We want to see if they want to participate in the project. They have the opportunity to do it, but it's not a mandate. They don't have to. But if they do, we'll try to help identify their needs, and we'll try to connect them to the services. And our thought was we will be able to impact the trajectory of the case through the end of their cases as well. So we're trying to figure out ways that we can continue the expansion of the project, because we've seen such a benefit at, frankly, every one of the places where we've introduced the social workers. Those types of things are tangible things that you can let a prosecutor or a judge know, so that as we're trying to work through what should happen on this case and what the ultimate outcome is going to be, they have a little more confidence that something is actually going to be positive, and again, hopefully lead to a likelihood of success.
You seem pretty confident that it will be able to continue.
Yeah, I absolutely think it is. We've been able to sustain it now since January of 2018, I think is where the first piece came in. We've been able to expand it from there.
The MacArthur Foundation says they consider this program a success and one that other MacArthur communities could emulate.
It makes me feel great because we believe that it is just a complete change in how we are providing representation for people, and we think it is a much better way to provide representation. It's like a team effort of looking at things more broadly than we otherwise would have. We believe they're going to end up with better outcomes on their cases, but most importantly, we're hoping that we are going to help them and support them to be successful so they're not returning to the system. That's where we're finding the real benefit from the social workers.
200,000 MacArthur grant dollars were spent on Strategy 4, diversion of underserved populations. In addition to providing procedural fairness training throughout Lucas County, the strategy helped expand diversion, which is an alternative to traditional prosecution that redirects people away from the criminal justice system. And it addresses defendants with specific charges.
Drug paraphernalia, obstructing official business, disorderly conduct, relatively low-level cases that probably aren't the highest of priority cases.
So many of these cases were being booked in the jail, and these bookings had a disproportionate impact on minorities. County leaders say together the procedural justice training and expanded diversion curriculum address the underrepresentation of African Americans in diversion programs. On the other side, Strategy 1 aims to break the cycle by equipping law enforcement with skills in procedural justice, crisis de-escalation, and more. This includes offering pre-arrest options like deflection programs and community behavioral health resources. Partnering with Ohio's Attorney General, the county provides mandated training for officers on topics like community relations, implicit bias, crisis de-escalation, and constitutional use of force. 250,000 MacArthur grant dollars were spent on Strategy 6, community coordinated practices. County leaders say before implementation, people on probation often face the complicated barrier of being supervised by multiple jurisdictions at the same time. In some cases, probationers had 2 ankle monitors and 2 different sets of rules. Lucas County leaders say they unified the 5 probation authorities to streamline probation practices and reduce violations that led to incarceration. This coordinated approach includes countywide information sharing, training on evidence-based practices, use of risk assessments, graduated sanctions, and consistent quality assurance. Through the Ohio Risk Assessment System, the county determines supervision and programs based on client risk and needs. Strategy 5 is about reducing racial and ethnic disparities. The bulk of it, nearly $300,000, was awarded via microgrants to community organizations that could help reduce racial and ethnic disparities with their programming and engagement. Episode 8 of the Rethinking Jails and Justice podcast is dedicated to that. 100,000 grant dollars were set aside for the final strategy, amplification. WGTE Public Media was chosen to help with this strategy. This after many county leaders say they could have done a better job of explaining the challenge and the reasons behind it to the community and even county employees early on.
Outside the system, that's a different work. Community work, engaging with people in the barbershops and in the community centers and the churches, that's different work. That's more social work or community work or societal work. The criminal justice system is pretty bureaucratic, right? You got a judge, you got a bailiff, you got a sheriff, right? You got a cop, you got a CO in the jail. We spend a lot of time in a bureaucratic system talking about what happens when people come in. And there were some successes here. I would have spent more money and time, and I think my voice through this whole process was consistently that. Let's get out of here. Let's hire some people to be out in the streets talking to people. Let's engage people that are at the point of arrest. You want the system to change? Take it right down to the point of arrest.
Do you think that Lucas County would have been more successful if they could have, and did they even have the option of taking those millions of dollars and putting it into one thing? Like say, we're going to put it all into training law enforcement to de-escalate, or invest in community centers as opposed to all of the different strategies?
I don't think so, and the reason I say that is this is a multifaceted problem. We didn't get here overnight. It wasn't one thing that caused it. This is what I would say is, like, when I'm analyzing a problem, I talk about silver bullet problems where one thing is going to solve it, or a multifaceted problem. This is clearly a multifaceted thing. Every community across the country of any size is dealing with similar issues, to different degrees. And because it's a multifaceted problem, I think it requires multifaceted solutions.
We could have distributed the money differently, but there was consensus. Look, I'm only one voice in this room, right? So I'm a consensus operator too. The judges and the systems operators, the judges and the bailiffs and the prosecutors, of course, thought it was more important to do some systems reform. And it was. I'm not discounting that. Right? We needed to do some systems reform. We needed to bring that striker population down from 435 to 167. That's a win. There's more people out with a chance to be productive than locked up in jail 24 hours a day. So those are wins. There is uniform kind of guidelines on who gets bail release now. Out of this MacArthur work, we have been the judges to agree on a kind of a scoring system for bail. So it's not entirely each judge calling for bail or not bail. There's a time-honored rating system that they put everybody through. That's a win. So I don't mean to say that the justice challenge was a failure, because there was a lot that came out of it. But at the end of the day, our challenge was to reduce the disparity of people in our jail, but we didn't quite get to that.
If you could go back in time with a magic wand, what would you have done differently?
Spent more money out in the community, bringing people from the police departments, and there are many people in police that sometimes people don't like the term police reform, right? So let's not call it that. Let's call it engagement. Let's sit down. We all know how the system works. You can find people on every block that are a thought leader on that block, right? It might be the grandmother that sits on her porch. She'll rule the block sometimes. Nobody will disrespect her. She has empathy and command. How do we get to those thought leaders with thoughtful police strategies to say, we're not here to roust you, we're not here to look for your license plate, we're not here to bust you up and try to get you on a bench warrant to have it? How do we communicate with those thought leaders?
I would say that the disparity across the criminal justice system has been improved, but when you look at the jail numbers, the disparity has actually increased. Now, there are absolutely less people in the jail right now, but when you look at length of stay and things like that, yeah, those disparities absolutely remain, and I think, in fact, in some cases have increased. As an office, as a defender of individuals, I want to see that people are treated equitably. I want to see that we are treating people fairly, regardless of race or gender or age. That doesn't mean that we don't hold people in the jail. So if there are people that are charged with a very violent offense, and a determination has been made by a judge that they should be housed at the jail, I think that similarly situated people should be treated the same. So if there are aggravated murder charges and the decision is made to house them, then race may be impacted by the number of people with those particular types of charges. But so long as, I guess, the decision making appears the same for similarly situated individuals, you may have disparities, but I think those are disparities that a judge would be able to explain and you'd be sort of less concerned about. But when you have a situation where maybe you have low-level offenses and you're seeing major disparities in how those are treated, that to me is a larger concern.
What many also find concerning: skyrocketing jail construction and interest costs. Initially estimated at $220 million, commissioners say the project's cost rose to $290 million.
My understanding is on pause. I don't know what that means for the future. I do hope that we're in a position to, as a community, get the jail built, because I think that it will be a more impactful facility for clients of ours, but I think it'll also be safer and more humane, not just for the individual clients, but also for the staff that work there every day.
Is it going to happen?
I have no idea. I certainly hope so. The jail's being asked to do a lot of things, right? And we've talked about this for years, but I mean, they're being asked to be a detox facility, and they're asked to be a behavioral health unit, and support people with lots of different medical needs, including mental health needs. It's difficult. I mean, they're not probably best positioned to provide those services, but there are times when they've needed to become the place that's housing those individuals. And if we want to do it in a humane way, and we want people to get better, not worse, in the facility, then I think a new jail is pretty critical to getting there.
It's tough work. It's just hard work, and a very complicated system that's traditionally underfunded. We tried to pass a jail levy. People said we're not going to pay tax dollars to build a jail. I get that. We're not going back to do that. I got the answer. It was no. All right. I am going to turn to the state and say it's your responsibility. You push these obligations on us, and I think we have to continue to run at this from separate tracks. We need more money from the state, and we still need the cooperation of the judges, and we need to get out in the community and reduce the number of people who get arrested. Like I say, every county in this state has struggled on this. Small counties, large counties, Republican, Democratic. I go to the meetings of the County Commissioners Association. We all have the same voice on there. First of all, the state has to provide more money to the communities for jails. At the end of the day, it's the state's responsibility. This is a state criminal justice system at its top, right? It should be managed by the state. They have pushed costs away from them and onto the communities for the last 10 years. That you guys have to pay more for what is a state obligation. You can't send us prisoners if they're sentenced to unless they're sentenced to a year or more in prison. I've been committed to this jail project for 10 years. We have a site. We took a long time to get one. I think the general public is concerned about the jail as a smaller class of voters are. I think they want to continue us to do economic development, community development, manage our staff. It's an issue, I agree, but it's not the driving issue of what we do every day. It's an important issue. We still work with the sheriff, but we're going to build a jail when it makes economic sense. I can't bankrupt the rest of the county to build a jail, all right? And again, a lot of this is going to go back to Sheriff Navarre. I think we can control the construction costs over time fairly quickly. I know we can control the interest rates coming down in the near term, but he has to wring costs out of his operation to do it. He has to be successful in getting a staffing plan that will allow his less people to do the same work that they're doing today under a new system of behavior management called direct supervision. And he's got to come to the table quickly. Hasn't done that yet.
So really, you're kind of pointing the finger at him and saying, we're waiting on you.
Oh, I am. And he says he has a plan. Like I see it.
But the sheriff released a statement saying, quote, "The staffing plan for a new jail was submitted to the county commissioners through members of their staff months ago." He went on to say, "I've had personal discussions with all three commissioners regarding this plan and its importance to the success of constructing a new facility." The staffing plan will allow the new jail to operate with significantly less people, saving the county approximately $7.5 million annually. It will be these cost savings that will pay a large portion of the annual debt payment. End quote. He said this plan was approved by the Fraternal Order of Police, and commissioners know it.
He's an amazing sheriff. That's, that's the role of the sheriff. I mean, that's not for me to come in and say, "You're the sheriff. This is what you need to do." But we have to do this as a team. If we're not doing this as a team, then we're not going to be successful.
Lucas County Commissioner Lisa Sebecki, a former state rep herself, says state leaders are the ones who need to step up.
Lucas County, we're trying to be able to build our jail here. My friends over in Ottawa and Erie and Sandusky are trying to build theirs. This is a state issue. So I am proud of the legislature that in this General Assembly, when they did their operating budget for the first time in history, in Ohio history, there was capital dollars for jails in the operating budget. First time in history. So, and I'm proud of my friends and colleagues in the other counties that we work diligently with our state legislature, the Speaker of the House, the Senate President, to say, listen, this is an issue that we, and also the governor, is this is an issue that we have across the state. We need help. It was a start, but it isn't enough. And so I'm going to continue, as we're getting ready to go into the next General Assembly, is to advocate with my colleagues, my fellow colleagues across the other counties like we did before, to be able to get some of that funding.
Some people in the community have speculated to me the commissioners are waiting to pull the plug on this project until after Election Day. I know you're not on the ballot.
Ballot or not, do they have a crystal ball? I would love to borrow it because I have no crystal ball. It's in the future. I have no crystal ball if the interest rates are going to come down. It could be. I don't know. But share information with me if they know something I don't know. But is that I'm not going to stop. This Commissioner Lisa Sebecki, is not going to stop. I'm trying to find resources so we can get this done. We are going to need to solve this issue. So, but hypothetically, say if we did put it off and we waited a few years down the road, are we still going to have the same problem then as we have now? And that price tag might be higher.
They are quite honest about what has gone well and where they've faced challenges. As I stated before, they have been one of our most successful sites.
Despite the disappointing delay in construction, MacArthur Foundation Program Officer Neda Abbasi says Lucas County leaders should celebrate their success.
They should feel positive about that and feel like they can sustain some of that momentum. Lucas County has successfully sustained the reduction of their jail population. We've seen a lot of places are struggling with their jail numbers and are seeing their length of stay go up, but Lucas County has been consistent. One of their best initiatives is their jail population review team, which is exactly what it sounds like. Several stakeholders gather together, look at who is in jail, how long they've been in jail, if they could be released, which really helps individuals safely re-enter the community and also connects them to the resources that they need to stay out of the jail.
She says there's still a lot of work to be done across the nation.
Oh, well, we saw overall in our sites that as the jail populations are reduced, the disparities were actually increasing. And of course, issues with race are not specific to the jail, but they exist across the entirety of the criminal justice system. Given the history of racial inequity in this country, we also knew it was going to be challenging to address these issues in like a finite amount of time. However, as the funder, we wanted to nudge the process along in each site, including Lucas County, and try to do whatever we can to help them find different pathways to address these disparities and make sure they're doing it with intentionality and with all the people that should be involved in that process. I don't know that I would say Lucas County has done anything wrong in this space. I think it's just been challenging across the board. And we also did just start to get data from the site specific to race, which is helping us pinpoint where exactly disparities are existing, whether it's in the arrest, whether it's in diversion programs, which can help inform local policies. So I think it's just a long game. Like, it's not going to be fixed in the short term given the history of the system, and being patient is also difficult in this space.
While the MacArthur Foundation will provide some support to Lucas County in the coming years, Abbasi says the foundation is no longer working in the criminal justice reform area, at least for now. In a statement, she said, quote, "Making the criminal justice system more fair, equitable, and just remains important. All of our Big Bet program strategies aim to achieve transformative change over a time-limited period of about 10 years. This is why our criminal justice strategy is due to come to a close soon. We are very proud of the progress safety and justice challenge communities have made in reducing the number of people in jails and addressing racial and ethnic disparities." End quote. Meanwhile, Perez is thankful he had help.
I'm proud of my kids. I really am. My grandkids too, man, they're marvelous. Yeah, I love them.
Looking back on life is bittersweet.
They're grown, they got their own lives, you know, their own marriages, their own kids, you know, and so I'm just glad to be here that I can be here.
He wishes he hadn't wasted so much time in the streets.
I'm the one who severed that chain of this lifestyle, like with my kids and my family, you know, or with my kids, that it ends with me. It's over. Like that cycle's done. There's no more revolving door. I was selfish and I didn't spend time with them like I should have, and do stuff like I should have. And even now, you know, I knew when I was coming home, you know, you heard the song "Cats in the Cradle," right? That's what I'm dealing with now. You know, my kids got their lives. They got their own lives now, you know.
But he chooses to be thankful instead.
Well, I got a charm that I had that a friend gave to me, and I kept it in my pocket. It's the Serenity Prayer, and I keep it in my pocket. God, grant me serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things that I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. When I reach in my pocket every day, I feel it and I know it's there. I'm doing this because I want to do it, but because I hope I can help people out there. I really do. I know I chose the perfect job for me because it's therapeutic. It really is therapeutic for me. I'm not riding with my windows up. I have to have fresh air. It's freedom. Absolutely. I get to see people, I'm waving at people, they think I'm crazy. Like, who's this guy waving at us, you know? But they don't know where I'm coming from. They don't know the freedom that I have. But, you know, to see the beauty of everything, yeah, and that's it. Like, to be able to see the beauty of everything that exists outside of the city, outside of, you know, the fishbowl. You know, we're always stuck in the hood and being stuck in the city and being stuck in a fishbowl, not knowing that there's a whole ocean of life out there, you know what I mean? And when people can learn to get out of that fishbowl and see what everything else is out there, it's life-changing. And to be able to do that, coming home from prison, to be able to do that and do it in a truck and do it as a job, you can't beat that. Win-win. It's a win-win.
Do you feel what the eyes can't see? You hear it calling way down deep. Trust your heart, it'll keep you true. This world expects so much from you. Every step will test your soul. You will walk out pure and whole, stronger than the day before. Tomorrow you'll fight for more.
Hello there and welcome to a WGTE Public Media Town Hall meeting. My name is Jerry Anderson, and along with a live audience here in the WGTE studios, we have just watched, along with you, an outstanding documentary chronicling the 10-year journey local people have been on to rethink jails and justice. Local people, we should point out, who are part of a national effort. And if you watch the last 15-20 minutes especially, I've got a sheriff there and the commissioner there, And this is live TV, and Jerry's very happy. Also here is the writer, producer, voice of that documentary, Jason Hibbs. Mr. Hibbs has also produced a series of 10 podcasts, which have been dropping weekly dating back to Labor Day week. Very impressive young man. And by way of introduction, Jason is an assistant teaching professor at Bowling Green State University, where he also pursues doctoral courses. So give me a sense. You've talked to so many people in so many facets of the Safety and Justice Challenge over the past many months. Give us a sense of how far you feel we have come in our effort to think about the way we use our jails and how much has yet to be done. Which of those two feelings is stronger for you as we start this gathering here tonight?
Yeah, I appreciate the question. I consider myself a traditional TV news reporter, so I'm not used to weighing in on the stories that I do, but it is clear after everyone that we spoke with that there absolutely are many successes with this project. Lucas County was able to reduce that jail population and keep those numbers lower. A lot of the other MacArthur communities, I understand, were not able to maintain those lower numbers. But as was mentioned, we do have the racial and ethnic disparities that is still there. And another thing that came up in several of the interviews was that community piece, that perhaps this challenge wasn't communicated well enough to members of the community and even people who work for the county, like sheriff's department employees who maybe didn't quite get the memo on what was going on and what this money was used for and not for.
Okay. Now, I want to point out that we are not here tonight to rehash the Safety and Justice Challenge that Lucas County's been involved in, since the middle of last decade. I mean, think about it, starting with our own town hall down at the main library downtown. That was January. The Safety and Justice Challenge, its history, its strategies, their outcomes have been largely detailed and discussed and debated. But as formal engagement with the John D. and Catherine T. MacArthur Foundation, which sponsored the Safety and Justice Challenge nationally, comes to an end, we'd like to focus our town hall tonight. We want it to be more about what we can learn from what has worked, what hasn't, what we wish you had done differently, all to inform us about what we still need and want to do going forward. You're going to hear that word forward a lot, I know, because I'm the host. Forward. Speaking of the MacArthur Foundation, it gives me great pleasure to introduce Lori Garduque, who has made her way to Toledo from the Foundation's Chicago headquarters. There she directs the criminal justice program for the John D. and Catherine T. MacArthur Foundation. It is so great to have you here. Thank you for making your way to Toledo. I hope you enjoyed the sunshine and blue skies we gave you today. She points out she's from Chicago. She's used to what we had here today. Welcome in. Do this for me. One of the things the Safety and Justice Challenge did, you didn't tell local communities with whom you party. You don't tell them what to do. You don't tell them how to do it. You let them do it, but you do ask them to collect exhaustive data, supply it to you. So take me to Chicago. You're sitting at the conference table at your, I guess, high-rise office. Let's call it that.
13 floors.
13 floors?
Yeah.
Toledo, that's high. Okay. You're up there in the conference room, and the subject is Lucas County Safety and Justice Challenge. What would I be hearing in there? Put me in the room where it happens.
Well, thank you, Jerry, and I appreciate my panelists giving us perspective.
Sure.
And the documentary. Kudos to Jason. So I want to point out that the way we started the challenge, most of the focus in criminal justice reform was at the deep end of the system. So it was focused on sentencing reform, conditions of confinement, and reentry. And very little attention was being paid to the front door. And that, as some of the statistics were noted, the admissions to the jail are 19 times the number of admissions to prison. And moreover, many of the people who are detained are there for low-level, less serious offenses, and it's often a revolving door in terms of people coming back through the system, which in many respects represents the failure of other systems to provide the support and services, support families and communities, and lead people into having conflict with the law. So we issued an RFP, 191 jurisdictions in 42 states.
That's request for proposals.
Yes.
All right, 191 people.
191 jurisdictions in 42 states, And we asked folks to say, can you get consensus among your system stakeholders? Are you willing to look at your data and identify where racial disparities are and the drivers of your jail population? And are you committed in the long haul to doing this work and sitting around a table to do the work? So that's what stood out to us about Lucas County, is that they had the commitment from all of the system stakeholders, whether it was the prosecutor, the defense bar, the judges, so all of the sheriff. So we knew that they had the building blocks, and then we gave them the scaffolding to develop their own plan about how to address the drivers of the jail population.
Now, as part of the foundation on which to build our town hall here tonight at WGTE, let's get this out there, if we can. And it's the why piece. Because we talk about the goal is to reduce jail populations and blah, blah. Why do we care? Because some are wondering, why do we care about jail populations, after all? And here, you know where I'm going with this. The people who are saying, wait. Cops are out there busting tails to catch the bad guys, put them in jail, and you all want to let them out. So let's start there to build the rest of our discussion looking forward. What is the why of the Safety and Justice Challenge?
So it's all about community safety and how do you want to spend the taxpayers' dollars. So if the people who are being detained in jail don't pose a risk to public safety.
And the majority do not.
Correct. Why are we detaining them? But can we be smart about making those decisions? So we know that Lucas County has reduced its jail population by 30%, and there's been no increase in crime and violence. There's not a relationship between the two. And what's more important is to note that the people who have been released from jail are not later rearrested. And we have the data for that. And Lucas County is looking at its data on an ongoing basis to see, do we need to make some course corrections? What other strategies need to be addressed? And they approached it holistically. So as you saw from the description of the different strategies, my phrase has been everything, everywhere, all at once, because they approached it systemically. And they also engaged other systems, whether it was behavioral health or it started to look at housing issues, but some of the other drivers of why people have conflicts with the law. And they were thinking about proportionality. How do we hold people accountable, repair the harm, and promote safety so that the resources of the justice system are used, in fact, to promote safety and not unnecessarily detain people?
But you mentioned that 30% decrease in the overall jail population, but the second part of this charge was to reduce the racial and ethnic disparities.
Right.
Did any of the MacArthur communities find success with that? And why did we not succeed in that area in Lucas County?
So we identified this as a problem when we did this has been a 10-year initiative. So at the midpoint of the strategy, we did do a deeper dive in looking at racial and ethnic disparities. And what we found was that many of the strategies that had been adopted benefited white people more than they did people of color. We had to do a deeper dive in understanding that. So what we have seen is a change in the jail population. So the people with the low-level, less serious offenses are no longer in the jail. People charged with what are called misdemeanors. People with more serious charges, people who have had difficulty showing up in court because of failures to appear, they're being detained. And so we did a deeper dive to say, well, what are the systemic and structural issues that lead to this? Is it over-policing? Is it holding someone's criminal record against them even though it was an offense that happened 5 years ago? Were there more appropriate ways of responding than having this revolving door? And so that's what Lucas did. It started looking at some of these other issues. If you have a population that's between 18 and 35, how do we get people re-engaged in the workforce, continue their education, and so on? Because when you interrupt someone's life course, you're only setting them up for continued failure.
You told me something this week. You said, I'm not an abolitionist, and now all of a sudden everybody's ears are perking up. What you were saying is, the foundation is not about abolishing jails.
Correct.
You would agree there needs to be jails. You did also say, though, you are about reducing the criminal justice footprint. Put that together for me.
Well, this goes to are there other systems that are more appropriate in responding than the law enforcement, courts, and corrections? So instead of bringing someone who's in a behavioral health emergency crisis should you have a co-responder model that takes someone to a crisis stabilization center? When that person is stable, should you, if housing stability is a problem, how do you connect them to housing? If they have a substance use issue, how do you help them obtain drug treatment? It's also something that could start happening in the jail. So I'm saying other systems to me need to be involved because I see this as a community problem, not a criminal justice problem.
You stay with us. We also have with us Lucas County Sheriff Mike Navarre. He has several dogs in this fight when you think about it because the sheriff operates the jail. He's also in charge of the law enforcers who are out there catching the bad guys or the suspected bad guys. So in the course of doing their jobs, they help populate the jail, which you also run. They supply the residents, if you will. Mr. Navarre, of course, earlier was the police chief of the city of Toledo and the city of Oregon. You know this area so very well. Part of criminal justice reform and the Safety and Justice Challenge did ask the police of our community to do things differently. So my question to you is, right now, how is all of this flying with local law enforcers at this point? And give us your future view of where we should go from the eyes of law enforcers.
Well, it's a challenge with the law enforcement beat cops. As you stated, they feel that their job is to figure out who committed the crime and ensure that that person is introduced to the criminal justice system and the courts. The typical mentality of most beat officers is that if that person remains in jail, he's not out on the street, he or she, committing other crimes. It's going to be a tough challenge to educate those officers on the long-term benefits of doing what we've been doing here in Lucas County in reducing that jail population.
Okay, on diffusing tense situations, training there. Is that working? Can we prove it's working? Are we trying it?
We have gone to great efforts to provide all of our law enforcement officers in Lucas County with specialized training, crisis intervention training, which started in Memphis, Tennessee. We were one of the very first in Ohio, I think second only to the city of Cincinnati. Toledo picked that up back around 2001. And we are also doing a lot of de-escalation training.
Yeah.
And it used to be that, jump in, handcuff them, and haul them away. Now, sit back and talk to them and see if there is, see what the real problem is. And every officer has got body cameras now. And we take those best scenarios that officers are able to resolve situations and use them as training videos for other officers, especially the younger ones.
You know what I heard recently? I don't know, it must have been just, minutes ago. You need to wring millions of dollars out of your budget if we're going to get this jail deal done.
Well, money's a problem. In any municipality in Lucas County, I have made great strides to reduce our personnel costs by reducing the number of people. I have a problem with an underpaid workforce, but I think I can take care of that problem by reducing our overall cost, and I put a plan together, which I hope to present. I tried to do that on Tuesday. That didn't work out so well. And I'm looking at possibly reducing our personnel costs by about $3 million a year by cutting positions and cutting posts. And we have too many people. And people cost money. That's the lion's share of any government budget.
Okay, but we're talking about the safety. I'm underscoring safety here. Are we doing this at risk to our community? But hang with me, because I remembered where I just heard that you needed to wring money out of your budget. It was County Commissioner Pete Gerken in the documentary. $3 million he can get out of his budget. Is that a starter? Is that something?
Everything is something when you have this kind of cost for jail, and we don't turn our back on any savings and cooperation that we get. But I think I don't want this conversation lost on a building about a jail. We spend some time on this.
Yeah.
A building itself doesn't change the entire system. It's a vehicle for change. It's a place for change. But what we've done over the past 10 years was not solely to build a new jail. It was to reduce our population, get our racial disparity down, which we haven't, be honest. The jail population reduction is a variety of I said to judges came together. And 20 judges, when you get 20 judges together to agree, that's miraculous. I wish they'd agree next week with us on something. But that's a high point for me, is when we did that. We've run population down. So I don't want to get hung up on what the jail costs, when it's going to get built. It'll get built when everything can come to do it. What are we going to do next? And here's always been my focus. What happens before people, how do we keep people from getting arrested upstream? What are we doing on the streets so people don't get arrested?
Let's go forward. 2025 is upon us. What are we going to do? You're a county commissioner.
I had a good friend of mine I've known a long time. He had 19 years in prison, 7 prison numbers. I said, Stan, how'd you quit going to jail? He says, I quit breaking the law. All right? It seems like a simple concept. I'm going to go back to what we said earlier. You need engagement in the neighborhoods. You need police communications between the people who are patrolling and trust between the neighborhoods that they're in. If you can break down the number of people arrested, that, to me, is going to be the biggest factor in the racial disparity and the population control. And I'm going to give you one quick thing. I'm not running out of time. We have to move it away from where we have to move it to the juvenile system right now. I have a report to you on that. 20% of all the people, 25% of all the juvenile arrests right now are about domestic violence in the home. We have to take our concentration in the next phase into the juvenile justice. The connection of people with juvenile numbers and go back to jail as adults is direct.
Something also that comes to mind that I think is important, Jason, to inform our discussion as we look forward. The county commissioner is an elected position. The sheriff is an elected position. There is a change in public feelings on the whole subject of criminal justice. It's pretty startling. You had it in your podcast, I think it was Gallup data. Can you fill us in?
Yeah, people are reporting that they believe the justice system is not tough enough.
How many?
58% of people say the criminal justice system is not tough enough, and that is an increase from 41% just a few years before.
That's a very large increase then, from 41 to 58%. For those of you in the studio here at our town hall, does it surprise you that 58% of the people say criminal justice system is not tough enough? It doesn't surprise you? You think that is what people feel, and you see that in our community. Interesting stuff. All right. We have other people that we want to talk to here, and then we can just move around. We talked with people who have been in the system. Eloy was just wonderful. We'll get to you coming up in the documentary. Down here is my friend Thomas Crow. Thomas used to sell drugs. He started when he was 13 years old, just kind of dabbling around at 13. But man, by 18, he was moving the stuff, largely cocaine, heroin, right?
Cocaine at the time, yes.
Cocaine at the time. Pretty good living.
Yes.
You went to prison.
No, county jail.
You went to the county jail.
Yes, sir.
Okay, what happened to you then, and how did anything that happened to you then change your outcome or affect your outcome, if it did?
Well, while I was in the county jail, I had the opportunity to have the chance to do Lucas County Drug Court as a diversion rather than serving my sentence. And upon entering Lucas County Drug Court, I had the opportunity to go to the Zeph Center and receive both substance abuse and mental health treatment. And then I entered the fatherhood program, which I'm a part of now, that really, it changed my direction. What I did was, as a youth, I was chasing my father's love. My father was involved in this, and I was chasing his love with it. I had a participant the other night just say, the adult me's okay, but the child me's a mess. And that's how I was as an adult. I had portions of my life where I had a career and I was doing really good, but I had to always go back to this. And so by going to Zeph and receiving mental health treatment, substance abuse treatment, and then joining the fatherhood program and finding my purpose, I was able to change my life around.
And we're glad you did. You talk about having substance abuse and mental health issues, and we've seen statistics that when you put them together, almost 70% of the people incarcerated people fight with one, the other, or that devilish combination of both. You said something about you went to the Lucas County Drug Court.
Yes, sir.
Did it make a difference that the court system recognized your root problem, what you were wrestling with?
I mean, it did, and it was nice that they gave me a chance. I was someone that had made a lot of mistakes in my life, and I really didn't deserve, if you would look at my life as a whole, I probably didn't deserve it on paper. Yeah. But Judge DeVar gave me that opportunity to participate in this program, and they really worked with me. It was my first interactions with law enforcement. In my opinion, they weren't negative. I was having a judge, congratulations, a probation officer say, do a better job. They supported me. So it was nice to have those folks, as well as they worked well with my treatment team. You know, it wasn't always pretty, so my treatment team had to fight for me, and they did that. And it was nice to have that support from people that it's my tribe. My tribe pushed me, and they kept me going forward.
And remind everybody what you're doing right now.
I'm an outreach support specialist for the fatherhood program with Zeph. We work with fathers, helping them get back on their feet. You know, we're a nurturing fathers program at our core, but really we spend the first month, we say you can't pour from an empty cup. So we want to give you what you need to fulfill your own life and really get you successful. We talk about mental health help. We talk about anything that you need to fill your cup, and then we talk about parenting. But job training, assistance with living, whatever you need. We're trying to build a community of fathers for support.
We're also serious here tonight. You know what? I'm allowing rounds of applause in the studio. That's an amazing story.
Yeah, I just want to jump in. You know, everyone is different, and people respond to different stimuli. I wanted to ask Eloy, is there anything that could have made a difference for you earlier? Because it was really, I mean, you were on your own, and you had like a personal moment where something changed inside of you. But if someone had intervened earlier, would that have made you change your life earlier?
I think that I know a lot of my family members tried. It was just the mindset. I was just stuck on that path. That was it. That's all that I focused on. And it's like I said in the interview, in the prior interview, is this is my path. Like, this is, like, nobody never said, you know, hey, you don't, other than the law, of course, but this is a path, you can do this, and you can do this, you're a smart guy, you can do this, you can do that, you know. And I just, at the time, I never looked at myself that way. At the time, I looked at myself like, I'm not gonna say weak, but maybe like a low self-esteem, you know, even though I'll carry myself the way I carry myself, but just that, like, for society, like I wasn't meant for society because, you know, I'm brown, you know what I mean? And that's how I always felt, you know what I mean? And so I was just like, oh, well, I'm just gonna do what I do, you know, and that was the route I took, you know. So I mean, I'm sure, like, I mean, all my uncles workers, you know, roofers. My grandfather immigrated here. We're second generation, you know, Mexicans of my heritage and my descent. And grandfather brought all his kids, you know. I got my mom's is one of 12 siblings, you know, and they're all hard workers, and they all worked, and it just. They always try to get me to you know, hey, do this, you know, you're better than this. But I just, at the time, you know, I mean, I don't think there was anything that could have helped me as much as they tried to help me, you know, bottom line. But yeah.
All right, Eloy, thanks very much. I want to go to something earlier when we talked about the drug court, because Lori Garduque from MacArthur, you've talked about how some of the communities with whom you partner have things, this is from my very fancy notes, crisis triage centers, sobering centers, specialty courts, that type of thing. We have changed, or do we need to do a lot more changing, the way we look at the accused?
That's exactly what we're looking at, is alternative responses to law enforcement in the courts and giving law enforcement in the courts additional options. So being able for a co-responder model of having a law enforcement officer with a specially trained social worker, or perhaps two law enforcement officers that receive special training of knowing how to de-escalate. And that's something that we have seen in Lucas County. Instead of bringing someone to be booked into the jail, perhaps a sobering center, a crisis triage center. Once that person is ready to return to the community, making housing available. If they are booked into the jail, screening them earlier on, and finding off-ramps to shrink again the system and have alternative responses, which involves a collaboration across the county. It also includes listening to people who have been impacted, of saying, what do you need to put you on the right path, and what are some of those alternatives? And that's what's distinguished Lucas County, is that you have the system stakeholders, you have authentic community engagement, which, as we've heard, could be improved. You have the data, and I can't underemphasize the data enough. You have the data to pinpoint what are the decision points where you need to make changes that are not only catching people, in a manner of speaking, but they go deeper in the system instead of thinking of the off
So
ramps.
would you say we are well positioned to carry this effort forward?
Yes.
There's the word, forward.
Yes. So the way our funding operated, and while $5 million sounds like a lot, I doubt that it's rounding error in the county budget, but we gave you a certain amount of running room to try things differently, to come together to work, to pilot efforts, and then as our funding declined, the county funding has come back in. But you also have the infrastructure, the data, the partnership among the stakeholders to continue to push forward.
Much of the money came from MacArthur. Some came from the county. Is that money there to fund our efforts going forward? Short answer, please.
We have to make it a priority if this is what we want to do. There's other grants that come in, and I think a Criminal Justice Coordinating Committee and our SJC partners have found other ways to do it. And as Commissioner Sebecki said, we can't do this ourselves. Sometimes we feel there's nobody coming to help us but us. And so we're going to have to make a commitment on that. But we can do something different that maybe won't cost as much money, and that's start operating upstream from the system.
You're leading me perfectly where I wanted to go, because we're talking about somebody has to help us. In our next segment, we're going to talk a lot about a lot of people in this community who are actively helping now. So you are watching the Rethinking Jails and Justice Town Hall on WGTE Public Media. I want to thank this panel of guests. It all went too fast, but hang with us, because then we're going to continue our town hall with some other highly informed and very involved people as we push further into issues involving community-based efforts, community-based, to change lives, keep people out of the criminal justice system to begin with, why the local safety and justice challenge effort has struggled in the area of community engagement, why the racial ethnic disparity issue in local jails populations is such a tough nut to crack. All that coming up. But right now, a reminder that all of Jason Hibbs' podcasts, he's here with us. They started dropping Labor Day weekend. And along with those casts, which you've got to check these out, there's so much supporting information and data that you've made available. Tell us about it.
Yeah, thank you. And your radio forums, too. We should mention
that.
Thank you.
Also enjoyed those.
WGTE's website. Yeah, with these, what we tried to do is look for, the topics that kept coming up in our pre-interviews, I guess, with the guests. There were several themes that kept emerging. Law enforcement reaction and the impacts that this has on recruiting potentially. And it's not just potential. I mean, we have some evidence of that. Children, saving the kids, youth crime, time and time again, that kept coming up in our discussions. So we dedicated an episode to that. We have an episode that features Eloy about the opportunities behind bars that are now available through this grant, racial realities, and just a lot of other things that were on community members' minds.
So check it out. The information is out there. It's so important. It'll help all of us be more informed as we push where? Forward. And tonight, WGTE Public Media seeks to inform our community. I think you'll find that additional information educational and enlightening. Now, you're watching our WGTE Public Media Rethinking Jails and Justice Town Hall. We have a live studio audience here at WGTE. My colleague Jason Hibbs, you just heard of, he is the author of the documentary that many of you saw immediately previous to our town hall here. Now we're joined by some new panelists, including Holly Matthews, Executive Director of the Criminal Justice Coordinating Council. She was part of the original grant writing effort to bring the MacArthur Foundation Safety and Justice Challenge to Lucas County. She has been an energizing force in its implementation locally, an amazing data harvester. She actually eats this stuff up. She's perfectly suited to help us sort through some thorny, still remaining issues which followed the formal end of the Safety and Justice Challenge relationship and to point us toward the future. So, as we move forward, the MacArthur Foundation identified, and Lori made reference to it, a need in community engagement initiatives. And you didn't disagree with that. I'm just wondering, what exactly is that in terms that I understand? And what do we do about it, Holly?
I think identifying what the true community is always a challenge. Do we want the community that's connected to social structures, political campaigns, energizing the community, or do we want the small C community that's at the neighborhoods, at the block level that Commissioner Gherkin has referenced? And we did several iterations of our community engagement efforts, and we're still trying to find that right mix. I think the investments in the grant process, bringing funding to the community to do grassroots work was a great accomplishment, but I think we can still do more, and we are actually working with Tia Strozer, our technical assistance provider, through the Safety and Justice Challenge, and Gwen Wright to revamp a community engagement initiative.
And to be fair, MacArthur themselves say they found other Safety and Justice Challenge locations that kind of started from a better point of engagement, so we've been playing some catch-up, and that's what we're doing even now.
Yeah, and as Jerry mentioned, Holly, you are very well aware of the data, very data-driven, and you've been reporting that to the MacArthur Foundation. But as we transition away from this grant, how do you continue to hold yourself, the county accountable, I guess I should say, and make sure that we sustain this?
Well, I think one benefit we had going into this initiative is that under the CJCC is the Northwest Ohio Regional Information System, and we refer to this as NORIS, and NORIS is charged with criminal justice data integration, and through NORIS we have launched data dashboards related to our Safety and Justice Challenge initiatives, and we also probably author 1,000 plus data-rich crystal reports on a daily, weekly, monthly, yearly basis. And that data truly drives our work. And one example I will give is our morning jail population report that people ask to receive, and it gives a breakdown of every individual that is housed at the Lucas County Jail. And you will oftentimes hear discussions talking about this report on a daily basis. At one point, Toledo Municipal Court judges picked a number that they wanted to stay at the Lucas County Jail, and it would be in the elevator as a reminder, this is the number we want to work to. So we're very internally motivated, and we have the institutional capacity to move this work forward and hold ourselves accountable.
I promised we were going to do this in this segment, so buckle up, here we go. The racial disparity piece has been frustrating, and solutions to eradicating inequities have been elusive nationally, as well as here locally, nationally. Still, you tell me you do find some promising indicators. And again, I'm looking at something that maybe we can build on going forward. You find some promising indicators in things like diversion programs, which give defendants alternatives to incarceration, and which, let's face it, historically have been the purview of those who can afford them. And those people have often been, can I say it, white. You find some encouragement. Why?
Why, looking at our numbers, looking at our diversion participants, there is a majority of Black and Brown individuals being referred and participating in the Safety and Justice Challenge sponsored Toledo Municipal Court diversion program. So for me...
So MacArthur's paying for that?
Yes.
Okay. So go on, because you know where I'm going to go with this.
Yes, I do. And so to me, that is very promising, because when you look at initial data, you'll notice overrepresentation of minorities in most of the system, except for diversion, where minorities are underrepresented, which means less minorities are diverted, as you said, out of the system. So this is really our first step at changing that trend.
All right, so I think that's exciting news going forward. I'm thinking of, from my radio forums, Jason, on WGTE, Tremaine Rayford, all right, from the Program Inc. Yes, he was on your podcast too. What a tremendous guy. I'm thinking of Montrese Terry, the City Park League. I'm thinking of Sean Mahone, Sr., Young Men and Women for Change, from your podcast. I'm thinking of Avis Files, amazing, from Pathway. Fonda Royster, Open Arms. Alicia Smith, the Junction Coalition, their podcast, The Tune, right? Dr. Vincent Riccardi, the Belief Centers. There are so many community-based organizations that sometimes their efforts are redundant, they overlap a little bit because they're all kind of going that direction. But don't you think, Jason, that with the Safety and Justice Challenge, I think they've already done yeoman's work on the systemic side of this issue? The societal piece, it's going to have to come from this community and those groups, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so. And the juvenile judges said that you want that redundancy, even if it's a group doing the same thing that another group half a mile down the road is doing. For kids who are not able to drive or maybe safely, get across the county for something, you need that redundancy. So in an ideal world, you would have a bunch of community organizations, every few blocks in Lucas County responding to the exact needs from that area. And you kind of have that data because you know who's being arrested in what area for what.
Doesn't that kind of go to Commissioner Gerken? Doesn't that kind of go to what he was talking about? Out there at the very front of all of this with people who know them. They know the neighborhood, they know the issues, they know the families, they know the trouble. Just a salute to those organizations, many of whom, by the way, are crying for funding. All right, let me give you this. And by the way, all of you can weigh in on any of these things. I'm just throwing them out there because I think they're important. From Tremaine Rayford, and I quote, "The number one societal ill in our community is fatherless young men." Carl Mitchell from the Reformed Church, quote, "Fatherless kids are more likely to commit crime and go to prison." Avis Files at Pathway, "If a father is involved, the social ills go away." It's a recurring opinion. They were all through your podcast. A recurring opinion from people dealing with kids and trying to keep them out of trouble. Mike Hampton is here. Mike, I got to tell you about Mike. Mike, you were an aggressive young man. You could get in some scraps from time to time, but just minor stuff, misdemeanor stuff, until he got older, actually. And he's not old, he's younger than me. But, a couple of domestic violence charges, that will put you, that's felony stuff, Mike.
Yes, sir.
All right. Can you help me out with the racial piece? Because you have some opinions. If somebody comes to you and says, well, they're just picking on black folk, what do you say?
Well, if you don't do the crime, you don't get caught, you ain't got to worry about getting picked on. So, how can they profile something if you're not doing nothing? Don't break the law, you ain't got to worry about it.
Does that message resonate with young people?
Well, over a period of time when they change in their life, and they get to a point somewhere in life, young, old, they want to change. So opportunity knock, I guess I'm the opportunity.
Yeah.
And, for my journey and my walk, I had to start at the bottom. I had to work hard, I had to prove myself worthy of certain things in life. And a lot of people, if they take life for granted, but if you prove yourself worthy of something, you can succeed.
Yeah. You came highly recommended from Judge Tim Kuhlman's office. You know the judge?
Yes, sir.
Tell me about the work you are doing, because another piece of all of this, as we move forward, something that's already in existence, has been for a while, it's a tremendous story, but man, it needs to continue working. The First Wednesday program. We're letting people come out of prisons and saying, you're free to go. Go where? I don't have a car, I don't have a job, I don't have a wallet, I don't have a credit card, I don't have a driver's license. Enter Mike Hampton.
Well, I can understand that story because when I got out of prison, felt like they threw me to the wolves. No help, no support, no nothing. Got involved with the reentry, and I never seen so many open arms looking for your future and not your past. So I built a support team. I built a support family. Do First Wednesday citizen circles. Judge would come. The judge, we didn't talk for months. He would just stare at me, but he was saying good things what I was doing. And when he started the reentry docket, opportunity knocked. Like I say, you got to prove yourself worthy of something. You prove yourself worthy of going to jail because you messed up.
Yeah.
Come out in life, prove yourself worthy, and live a better life. Well, the judge opened the door for me. I didn't know nothing about advocating, but I'm advocating.
There you are.
And I don't work with a program. I don't have this. I don't have that. I just, from the heart, they open their arms to me. So this is my way of giving back.
Oh, Mike, you're just doing it for the money. How much do you make?
Nothing. Zero.
He does have some great shirts.
Yeah,
Yeah.
We do like the re-entry shirt. It's a big part of the puzzle, and I was being facetious there. He's doing this all out of what? The goodness of your heart? Just giving back?
It was, I felt like I've been blessed coming home. with a bunch of positivity.
Yeah.
So to lead by example and show a way, and they can feed off of it. I give results. I'm somebody that they can talk to. I'm like a father figure, brother figure. I'm any figure they want when they trying to turn their life around.
Can I ask you, so if we want to be that person in someone's life, how do we do that without pushing them further away?
Well, like Jerry said, I was bad, but wasn't bad.
Wasn't bad.
I mean, so made mistakes and give back to my community. I go back in the community I grew up in. I help a lot of brothers and sisters over there. You don't have to go to prison for me to help you. I mean, anybody want to change, I'm their man. You know, they got to start proving something worthy in life. You know, once they be real with life, life will be real with them.
Like Hampton. Tell we're at a public broadcasting station. There's not an applause light. This should be going on, but you're allowed. Malcolm, ready? Also, here's Malcolm Cunningham. He works for Toledo's mayor as the head of neighborhood safety and engagement. Now, we should point out here, the city was not part of directly the Safety and Justice Challenge, but let's face it, Lucas County is, and the biggest entity within the county is the city of Toledo. You've heard what we've said about community groups, and you're all about neighborhoods. You've heard what we've said about dad. A city can't make dads be dads. Yet with all of those community organizations trying to help young people make better decisions, maybe stay out of the system from the get-go and not have to go in, you do believe there's a role for a city, an actual government entity, to support community efforts. What is that? What is the city doing going forward?
Yeah, thank you for having me, of course, and thank you for allowing me to be on the panel with everyone else here. I've engaged with, I think, a number of you in a number of ways. So we're thinking about a couple of things. We're thinking about convening with those community partners from the beginning with great intention, right? Thinking about those that have been most impacted by the issue of violence or have been most impacted by the issue of incarceration from the beginning, right? Designing with intention, thinking about if we're going to address racial disparities, then that means that we have to bring them to the table from the beginning, right? So we're thinking about that. So over the past year, we've developed a comprehensive plan by engaging directly with community members, engaging with people that were shooters at one point in time, people that have been shot, people that are survivors, people that are victims, people that provide services to that population as well, people that come from those communities that are most impacted. So I believe that it starts with engaging directly with and learning directly from this community, and then working together in order to develop long-term plans.
Go ahead.
Go for it.
No, you've got all sorts of people then, including people, like you say, who've been in the system, people who've been outside. But the people you're trying to reach, do they have to come to you? Are you going to them? How does that work?
It's all of the above. It's all of the above. So we do have a community violence intervention program. They come directly from community. Many of them have been on either side of the gun or have been involved in violence in one way or another, but have moved past it, that have moved into a space where they're trying to give back to community as well, right? So we work directly with them. We bring in our participants that we work with. We work directly inside of the school system. We're working on a partnership actually with juvenile detention right now so that we can go inside of juvenile detention as well. So it's a blend. It has to be going to them. It also has to be inviting them in and creating the opportunity and access for those that otherwise would not be able to come to the table.
Commissioner Lisa Sebecki is here. She has only been a commissioner for a couple of years, but then was down in the State House for a couple of terms and had several years before that over serving on the Toledo Board of Education. So you know well young people's issues. And you say, Jerry, that's where we have to start. And we heard from our last panel some of that. Folks, we got to get down to that juvenile level. Tell me about it and tell me why.
Well, I believe that we need to get at the juvenile level, but also be working on the adult level all at the same time.
Right.
If we're going to put a stop to this or calm this down. But if we're not, focusing on juveniles, look at 2023. In the city of Toledo, the violence was 30% higher with our juveniles. Why? 20% of them.
I'm sorry, this is last year?
2023, yes. 30% of juvenile violence is 30% of it's higher. So then when you look at the other piece that we're going into, though, is domestic violence that Commissioner Gergen just talked about. 20% of that's domestic violence with our youth. Why? So we really need to look at that and look at that going.
Go back to 20% domestic violence with juveniles. They're the victims or the perpetrators. Where are we going with this? I'm not following.
They are causing domestic violence in their homes.
They're beating their family up.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Go
And
ahead.
so we need to address that and ask the question why. But then when we look at, so are we going to put kids starting the juvenile system, and we already know they're going to end up moving over to the adult system. We know that. We don't need to collect the data. You can talk to any judge in town. They know that. So we need to start working in that area and asking the question of why. And some of this work is happening across the United States. So I've done some really deep diving into this. I had an intern in my office this past summer, and looking at who's doing this best practices, and then starting there. We don't need to reinvent a wheel that's already invented. And then start implementing those systems right here in Lucas County. We can do that work. We have the wherewithal to do that. And so diverting those kids into a different system than the system that's going to carry them into an adult system.
Are you committed on the part of Lucas County to fund as necessary at the existing level or greater level, if need be, going forward, what has come to be known as the safety and justice challenge in this county?
What I'm committed to is looking for funding, advocating for funding, and not all that funding is going to come from the state. Some of that funding can come from the federal government as well. If we are really serious about really criminal justice reform and looking at our juveniles, then we need a country, we need a nation that is really serious about that. I'm one voice, I have a loud voice, but I'll pick up a lot of other voices to come with me, and we are going to get this funding one way or the other, and we're going to be able to do that. And we have partners within our communities that want this as well.
Jason.
Yeah, so talking about the nation, my colleague from Bowling Green State University, Dr. Adam Watkins, is a criminal justice professor and researcher. So you kind of had your finger on the pulse of the criminal justice reform nationwide. Are other communities having this issue and this conversation with you about youth?
Yes, they certainly have. Most immediately, motor vehicle theft has been a particular issue nationally. And that is a particular offense that's connected to a variety of other offenses as well, in terms of the vehicle being used for the perpetration of other crimes. It was also the case as well that while I don't like to talk about the pandemic per se, it was an especially disruptive force, even though we're a few years removed from it now. We know, for instance, that the move to the online environment educationally had a particularly adverse effect on males. And nationally, we have found a weaker relationship between education or that attachment to education for that particular group. And that has been especially challenging in combination with ongoing challenges with housing instability, given ongoing concerns about the cost of housing, coupled with, unfortunately, the fentanyl crisis. And the disruptive force that unfortunately has continued to have on communities throughout the country.
Malcolm Cunningham, you wanted to weigh in there.
I would like to.
Please do.
I would like to. And I'll also say the pandemic was wildly disruptive for youth, right?
Yeah.
They also experienced probably the highest rate of abuse within their homes that they had at any other point in time, right? They lost access to immense social capital, social connections within the school system. They lost access to food. They lost access to mental health supports. And that all happened during a really critical developmental period for them, right? So the things that we're seeing when we're talking about upstream, we have to think about that as well, right? These things have an impact on people at any range, at any age rate. But when you're talking about a 12-year-old and a 13-year-old, a 14-year-old, when you're talking about the highest access to guns in the history of this country, when you're talking about more and more young people being shot and killed within these networks, it is not just going to have an innocuous impact. The results that we're seeing right now are a direct result of the things that happened before. the things that happened during that pandemic and afterwards have nothing to do with anything that those young people did, right? So it is a change. There are these things that have occurred, but we have to own our role. We have to own our responsibility when it comes to addressing this issue. And attempting to address systemic failure by pouring resources into systems, I do not believe is an actual appropriate path forward. I believe in some ways it is replicating the same issues that we have had for the past hundreds of years, just to be frank. I mean, we're talking about a shift from $220 million to $290 million, and we're not talking about direct investment in grassroots organizations that can make it happen with $25,000 a year, right? So like, if we're serious about it, and I'm sorry, I feel like I'm on my high horse right now.
That's why you're here.
I think if we're serious about it, then we're serious about it. And if we're not, then we're not. And if we're not going to truly own the impact that we have had on young people over the course of this pandemic, then we're actually not going to address this issue at all long term.
Dr. Adam Watkins, professor down in criminal justice down at Bowling Green State University. Whether it is the racial disparity piece or pieces that we didn't hit a home run on over this past decade, you take a different tack though. You look at it and say, wait a minute, let's not get bogged down in a data point here or there. Let's look at trends, and you're actually encouraged by trends. Can you talk about that?
Well, yeah, I have been. I mean, generally speaking, persons of color are most affected by crime and violence in the criminal justice system, and generally when we see those subsequent declines, they have the largest impact on that group. But I am reminded, and I would like to offer a bit of a caution, is, when we had that considerable buildup, and Jason refers to the Pew data, and sort of turning to the criminal justice system, pushing that pendulum back in the direction of maybe a more punitive direction. I would just like to point out that, in that buildup in the 80s and 90s, those were fathers, those were mothers, those were daughters and sons. And that had a considerable disruptive effect on families and communities. And I think we are, feeling some of that now. And I'm very concerned about the possibility of pushing the pendulum back in that direction and revisiting that. So I do sincerely hope that we do not move back in that direction.
And there's the study, there was an entire expose. Wow, I am speaking very directly today, I guess, on DYS and the impact that it has had on recidivism among youth in Ohio, right? It was across, I think the Toledo Blade put out an op-ed, the Columbus Dispatch, I am blanking on the names of the other newspapers across our state, but there was an entire, long-form journalism around this issue where they're facing immense abuse and struggles within the prison system. And those that go in have a 40% higher rate of recidivism into the adult system from there, right? So we're talking about another system that is designed in order to address this issue, but is actually causing more harm and is actually increasing the likelihood of long-term costs to our community, whether we're talking about removal from a household, whether we're talking about removal from a community, whether we're talking about the actual impact on those individuals that are inside
and
of
that should energize our efforts, I would think, when possible, to keep people from going to those places and find the various programs. I'm going to give last word to you, Holly Matthews, because you have lived and breathed this. I'm not going to ask you what are you going to do with your spare time now, but as you go forward, your feeling about where we are, and I just need about 15 seconds.
I'm feeling optimistic. I think we are ready to tackle ancillary issues, and we're already working towards that goal.
Congratulations to you for all the work and everybody who's been involved in the Safety and Justice Challenge. Your Honor, good to see you, Tim Coleman, as always. Hey, I want to thank all of our panelists for taking part in our Rethinking Jails and Justice Town Hall tonight. Special thanks to my colleague, podcast creator, Jason Hibbs. And Jason, so much work on the podcast. Check them out. The documentary tonight was amazing. I know a little bit about putting those together, and it is immensely labor intensive. What do you want to leave our viewers and listeners with?
Eloy, thank you so much for sharing your story with us. He makes me want to be a better man.
Yeah, very good. And I know you came away, you shared with me, Jerry, the community groups in this county.
Yeah.
You're not from here originally.
Right.
I
I've been here
grew
for
up
about
here,
4 years. There are a lot of people working really hard behind the scenes that most people don't see.
All right. And we want to thank all of those people for the work they do. Now, tonight I want to have special thanks to Lori Garduque from the John D. and Catherine T. MacArthur Foundation, being a huge part of our efforts tonight and over the past 10 years. Our best to you and all of your colleagues at MacArthur. Safe travels back to the Windy City. To all of those formerly incarcerated people who shared their stories, and we heard several of them tonight. Folks, that isn't easy. I thank each and every one of them, and thank you also, for we are now assisting others in getting their lives back together. Everybody who's been part of the local Safety and Justice Challenge, now we met so many of them at our town hall downtown back in January. Thanks for what you have done, and please don't stop now. The goal, reducing local jail populations, but to do it safely and in a just way. It is so laudable, but it takes work. So to all the agencies who are working collaboratively, congratulations. Cops and courts, yes, of course, that's part of the criminal justice system. But community, it seems clear, needs to be a massive part of criminal justice reform, and while it takes some heavy lifting along the way, our communities and the people who call them home will be among the biggest beneficiaries. My thanks to all the folks here at WGTE Public Media, Ray Miller, Director of Content Creative Services, Nathan Hirsch, helped produce, Brad Cresswell, Shane Potgater, all the wonderful technical people. Thank you so very much for being with us tonight, and please have a great evening.
Dig down, head low, relax, the river flows, takes you out to the sea, where the water will set you free. Blood flows, head shakes, bones break, the body aches, rise up the roots from the ground.